from idea to market, penetration, domination, and profit. I am an attorney in San Diego, and my primary focus is business and transactional. So basically what that means is for the past 7 years, I've been working with aspiring cannabis entrepreneurs as they begin their business, and then all the way through the business life cycle in terms of the additional contracts they're going to enter, the new businesses they're forming, the way that the market is changing. It really runs the gamut. What I found is that I'm oftentimes the first point of contact for people in this industry in terms of teaching them the laws, letting them know what's incorrect, what's kind of correct, what's 100% off the table. And then I find that clients kind of veer off. And I think there's a problem with that because there's so much more to creating a successful business and a successful brand than simply starting a corporate entity. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of thoughts. And every person comes into my office and says, well, I'm the best grower. Well, I've got this great new line of edibles. I'm a really good baker. I make the best cookies. Or I make the best oil. I promise you that there is no one that's coming into my office saying, I'd like to incorporate for my subpar brand of edibles. Everybody thinks they're the best. And you guys are all very good at what you do. But simply being the best at this point in the industry is really not enough. What it takes is building and creating a sustainable brand and making sure that you're doing everything to protect that brand. So that is a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to pass the microphone along to my wonderful co-panelists to introduce themselves. Then we're going to get into a bit of a moderated discussion, and then you'll see I've got a case study on the board. We're going to run through that as a group so that we're actually taking what we're learning here today and putting it to practical use. So without further ado, Starlight.
Hello, everybody. My name is Starlight Mundy. My company is Craft Mary Jane. I'm a consultant working with entrepreneurs inside and outside of the cannabis industry to help them put together the fundamental steps that actually build that quality brand that Kim was talking about. And I'm kind of a how to get to market snob / guru / advice giver. So I have lots of ideas when it comes to what, more than ideas, but vetted foundational concepts that work for businesses in and outside of the industry that help you get where you need to be and actually have a share and a slice of the market that is trustworthy and something you can count on and build upon as we're growing in the cannabis industry. You can check out craftmaryjane.com to find out more about me.
You sure can. I like that, a snob. Snob. I'm a trademark lawyer snob. Is that a title I can have?
Yes.
No, so my name is Amanda Conley. I'm an attorney with a firm called Brand & Branch that I started with a colleague a couple years ago, well, a year and a half ago, to focus almost exclusively on this cannabis industry and intellectual property protection, enforcement, and growth in this space. And it's been amazing, and we had a background in sort of technology and food and beverage trademark law and IP law generally, and the cannabis industry has just been a wonderful, wonderful place to practice law, as I'm sure Kimberly can attest as well. And so we work with clients to help them select a distinct brand. We don't help you come up with a brand. I always joke, you definitely don't want to pay my hourly rate for me to come up with a brand because you're not going to like it. But we're very good at telling you what's not a good brand and helping you find what's available. Working with you after or while you worked with someone like Starlight to develop a brand, we help then protect that and enforce it and grow your presence, and also to make sure that your public-facing statements, your website, your products, and everything are in compliance with both local cannabis laws and relevant federal laws, like FDA, FTC, issues like that. So that's me.
Great, thank you. And something that I feel like at least Amanda and I get asked a lot, even just this very morning, we were asked, so which comes first? Kim, do we work with you to set up the brand, or do we go first to Amanda and Brand & Branch? Like, who do we go to first? And the answer is, it's not one or the other, or first or second. A lot of these things should be done in conjunction with one another. And we'll go into a lot of that too, and we should have ample time for Q&A as well. So, without further ado, we'll begin our moderated discussion. Okay, one of my favorite quotes is, ideas are cheap, execution is everything. Once a great idea or ideas have been identified, what do you recommend is the next step or series of steps to take?
This is where one of my advisors, I'm not sure where the quote originally came from, but it's applicable to everybody. Failure to plan is planning to fail. Your great idea and the fact that you get filled with excitement about it isn't where it ends. I've often seen entrepreneurs immediately go heads down on their project, start developing something, slap a label on it, and start trying to get it into dispensaries without covering all their bases, without thinking about the long-term vision of their brand, without thinking about the long-term implications and shifts in the industry itself, and really coming up with a strong network of support that helps you build your business throughout that time. There are a lot of people who go, it's my idea, I gotta keep it to myself and not tell anybody, and I gotta do it quick over here where nobody can see me because I'm gonna show up on the scene and everybody's gonna be ready for me. The truth is, the cannabis industry is a very tumultuous place. And if you're not working with well qualified and people you've had actual relationships with and built a strong support system, your journey as an entrepreneur in the industry is much, much harder. So my advice to anybody with your bright idea is the first thing you should do before you get to work and spend a bunch of money is take what you have and start putting it in front of actual people who are your customers. Not your best friends, not your mom, but people who in the future will continue to purchase from you, not because they have a personal relationship with you, but because they love your product and love what you do. You can't do that by creating a whole product line and then putting it in front of people and hoping it sells. Because then you're put in the position of, please buy this, please buy this, please buy this. Instead of taking this early fundamental step of getting to know your customer, getting to know the solution scenario around what brings them and attracts them to your product, and then using their own language to let them know that you're here and available, right? And that information can make or break early stage businesses. Research, talk to your customers.
Don't underestimate the power of a focus group, formal or informal, and either Amanda or myself can certainly whip together quick NDAs for you if you're worried about that. If you're worried about putting your idea or your, workshopping the name that you have or talking to potential partners, there is an easy solution to that in terms of drawing up an NDA. We always talk about that potentially enforcing that NDA, what that looks like, but it lets people know you're serious and it lets them know you're not messing around and that you've got a legal team behind you, so don't mess with us. So I find a lot of people shy away from that as well, that, well, I can't workshop it because I don't want to tell anybody. Well, we can help you. The legal folks can help you protect that as well.
And the truth of the matter is fear about telling someone about your idea is a waste of your energy as an entrepreneur, because there's no original idea in the world. Everything is a remix. What you have is going to be built on what you execute, not on the idea that you told somebody else and then they execute it. That just doesn't happen in reality. It's okay to put something in front of your customers and get accurate feedback without being terribly afraid.
They also don't need to know the name of your brand or your recipe, using the edibles as an example. And so again, another conversation we had just yesterday, a lot of the times when you're in early stages and you're workshopping an idea or a marketing concept, that's not protectable really anyway, right? This idea of like, I'm gonna start a referral network. You get 10% off for every bar that you buy, or every bar that you refer out and someone drops your name. That's not a protectable idea anyway. So workshop those ideas. See if that's incentives for brand ambassadors. Don't be so scared to hold it so close to the vest. Okay, did you want to add anything to that? I'm kind of taking your thunder.
I concur completely.
Perfect. All right. So then, oftentimes the next step is to identify your customer. So also for Starlight, identifying the target customer is fundamental to your success. What do you find to be the best methods for identifying, targeting, acquiring, and then keeping the ideal customer?
So I'm not an attorney, and I kind of go about things a little bit differently in regards to focus groups, things like that. What I advise every entrepreneur with any idea is to find just five people that you think are meaning it's a hypothesis, think are your target customers. And then go and ask them a bunch of questions. Don't sell them on your business. Don't pitch them. What you're doing is trying to find out as much as you can about them so that you can inform your personal business decisions. I often find that talking to 5 people who I think are my target market, and listen, I'm sweet growers, well, they just need to smoke marijuana. No, they need to be far more specific than that, right? Women in cannabis. Well, how about women in California in cannabis who care about health, right? That's a much narrower market that will give you far more specific information about what you should do with your product and how to target them specifically. That research, and by research I mean conversations, that you have with your customers, asking them, how did you find out about other products like this? Who did you talk to learn about it? You'll suddenly realize where they spend their time on social media, whether they learned from some Facebook group why they should try your product, or they learned from a grandmother at a meetup, right? Targeting where your customers are is how you can then make strategic business decisions that meet that. When it comes to finding your target customers, I kind of have this suggestion. It's a little exercise I do with every entrepreneur. Your target customers do not come from haranguing your friends on Facebook to please share your brand. You're preaching to the choir, and you're ringing your small, finite social network of their support of you constantly by asking them over and over and over to bring you business. If your business is based on selling to your best friends, it's not long-term. So what I suggest, and you can do this right now, draw a circle, slice it up into 8 pieces of pie. Put in the center your target customer. In this case, we'll say, I'm an edibles company, and I'm specifically looking for women in cannabis, or maybe not in cannabis, but who might be interested in cannabis because they're focused on wellness, right? Those are my target customers. In each of those slices of pie, I want you to write one sector of the world that is not your competition. No other edible companies. So right off the top of my head, I can immediately go, okay, there's retreats, wellness retreats. There are dispensaries. There's education about wellness. There are meetups for people who really want to be healthy together. There's skincare companies. There are holistic services. There are food as medicine teachers. And there are yoga teachers. All of those people are all trying to reach the thing in the center, which is your target customer. In this case, because they're not your competition, if you can take that piece of pie and write 3 names within your network on every single piece of that pie and form strong, mutually beneficial relationships with them, you quadruple, sextuple the access of target customers that you have. And instead of going out and trying to get one target customer after another, you connect and form strong relationships with the people who are the source of your target customer. And now, instead of me doing a seminar and rolling in with 10 people, I can partner up with other people who have the same target customer and speak to a room of 50, and we're doing all of us our own sense of favor by working together without feeling like we're individually competing for the customers in the room. It's one of the most effective ways that you can build a community around your business, but more importantly, reach the source of your target customers instead of trying to pick them out like needles in a haystack.
Hope everyone wrote that down. That's really good. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about picking a name or logo for your company. Again, remembering I'm oftentimes the first point of contact. I'm doing your corporate formation. I'm teaching you the laws. We're drawing up contracts. No more canna this, no more canna that. THC, those letters are overplayed, so are CBD. It's time to branch out. So, what are some quick tips for coming up with a good name? And then I want to just do that really quickly so that we can punch over to Amanda to talk about, once I pick the name, you know, I've Googled it, maybe I've done a check on the Secretary of State's website, and I even bought the domain, so it's obviously clear, right?
Right. So when it comes to choosing a name, if you're at the stage where you just are working with ideas, let's start by don't get precious with it. The truth is your first idea isn't going to be the best idea for your company, and who knows why yet, because you're just getting started. Go broad, go deep, create a very big list, and start measuring each of them by tangible pros and cons. Are the URLs available? Are the social media handles available? And make an accurate, is it appealing to my target customer? Is it rejecting of my target customer? There are some people who've created cannabis businesses with names that are inherently fundamentally offensive to people in the cannabis industry, and they're thinking they're like in on a weird ass name, and instead they're repelling their target customers, right? Those things are really important. Cultural awareness is incredibly important. And this is gonna seem ridiculous, but don't say what you do. So-and-so accounting, Phil's plumbing, those things are great if you're a local neighborhood business with the name on the side of your car. If you plan on growing outside of your neighborhood, outside of your city, into the state or any states beyond, or licensing in the future, you don't want to have a name that is not protectable because it says what you do that's not original. Come up with favorite things and images and colors and portmanteaus and squish words together and try things. But don't think that just because your first, most straightforward THC, the healing center, is used by someone else that you're just out, and that your best option is to go with thehealingcenter.org as a differentiator. I'm going to hand it over to Amanda because this is her forte.
Yeah, no, Starlight's exactly right. And the best, I think that the best experiences clients have with selecting and clearing and then moving forward to protecting a trademark is when they are also working with someone like Starlight, or a branding and development firm who can help them come up with ideas. And you're right, everyone defaults to, here's what I do. I want my customers to immediately understand what I do, so I put it in my name. For a number of reasons, that's not a good move from a branding perspective. It's also not a good move from a legal perspective because, as you say, it's not protectable. And the reason is this. If I, am like, oh, large plastic water bottle, that is a great brand for this product, and I seek a trademark registration, and I say, well, the trademark is large plastic water bottle. Okay, what are the goods? Well, it's a large plastic water bottle, and the trademark office would say, well, no, then it's refused because it's merely descriptive, and we can't give you a monopoly on words that describe your product because we would prevent other people from accurately describing their products, which would be unfair. That's not how trademark protection works. So if you have a descriptive mark, there is a circumstance under which you may eventually be able to get protection, but it is such a small exception to the rule that I almost hesitate to say it, but I will anyway, which is this. There's something called secondary meaning, I can't think of it. No, it's something called secondary meaning, and in the trademark industry. And what it is when you come to think, you hear the brand, and you don't think of what they're doing, but you think of a specific company. So the best example for this is a company called Weed Maps. So if Weed Maps had come to us, 5 years ago or whenever they launched and said, hey, so we're going to make a bunch of online maps showing where you can get your weed, and we have a great brand, it's Weed Maps. We would have been like, well, that's descriptive, and it's going to be really hard to protect. What, are you going to stop everyone else from using weed and maps? That's crazy. Well, they got a lot of investment. They had a lot of money. They spent a lot on marketing, and they've spent a lot on trademark protection. And as a result, when you hear Weed Maps, what do you think of? You think of the company. Yeah, if we were not in this room and we were maybe in a different, broader market, that may not be the case, but certainly within their industry, Weed Maps has developed this name recognition that goes beyond the descriptive term. That is an exception, but it is by no means the rule. So what you need to do is pick a distinctive brand and, ideally be working with someone, have some names. You've worked with Starlight to come up with 5 things that you guys agree are good representations of your brand. They convey what you want. They're not descriptive. Send them over to your trademark lawyer, who will then look at them from a legal perspective and say, okay, good, you worked with someone who knows what they're doing, so these aren't descriptive. Are they infringing on anyone else's brands? And there we're looking at, what are other people using in the cannabis industry, certainly. And that's such a small market still that whereas you can have the same brand in different verticals, right? So like Pandora for streaming music, there's also Pandora for jewelry. That's fine. People don't seem to get confused. In the cannabis industry, we're still so, it's such a small industry, it's so tight-knit that, you might normally say, well, topicals and like chocolate are really different. You might be able to have the same brand. But here, if you're talking about infused products, you really don't want to use a brand another cannabis company is using. And if your instinct is, well, they spelled it with an S, so I'll spell it with a C. That's not helpful from a branding perspective, and it's not helpful from a legal perspective because that's a legally identical mark. So those little variations in spelling almost never make any difference unless they're super creative.
Can I just, for a minute, also touch on like the Hershey case and why ripping off someone else's name that isn't a cannabis product but is in the same category is also not okay. We come across that a lot, particularly in the food industry. I see that a ton.
Luckily, we haven't seen as much of that lately. A few years ago, I was seeing a lot of what we call brandalism, where you're taking something like the Hershey's, what did they have, Hashies for Hershey's. I mean, Hershey's sued this Colorado company. You probably heard about this. They made infused versions of all of Hershey's candy bars. Terrible idea, asking to be sued, especially by a company like Hershey's or any large company. We're seeing less of that, but what we're still seeing is people who are choosing a brand that is also a mainstream brand and not worrying too much, thinking, oh, well, they're not cannabis. Couple issues with that. One, let's say they're wine or beer or herbal products. Well, they're going to object because that's close enough, and consumers might think that that mainstream brand has now gone into cannabis. Or if they're just famous, they've got a right to object no matter what you do, even if it's not similar. They have to be really famous. But if they're really famous, you just don't want to go near that bar.
To give you a personal story, actually, this is kind of where I have to drink my own champagne. Craft Mary Jane's the name of my company. When I first started it, Mary Jane wasn't everywhere. Now it's everywhere. And when I say I'm with Craft Mary Jane, they go Mary Jane Medicinals, Mary Jane the website, Mary Jane the thing, this Mary Jane, that Mary Jane. And I, right now, am having to do the work of rebranding, coming up with a different position, because when I started out, it was about the message of the name. Craft Mary Jane, you can be pretty freaking clear about what it is I'm doing. But now that I've been established, and people already know me and what I'm doing, and they've seen my face, and I don't have to rely so hard on using my name to get out there, it's now time for me to restructure, rebrand, and come up with something that differentiates myself from the rest of the industry. Because there's nothing like somebody going, oh, you're with who again? And realizing that your business name has become diluted in the process. When the industry was just starting out, it was an easy move for me to make, but now that it's becoming more congested and more people are flooding in and using the same verbiage over and over and over again, it's become important for me to continue my differentiation by continuing to drink my own champagne and stay a step ahead.
And in this case, the rebrand is exciting, and you can make it into
Oh,
something,
yeah.
and it'll be cool. But the unfortunate case that I tend to see is people come in, they've been using a brand for a while, they haven't done their due diligence, it's probably fairly descriptive, but they've committed a lot to it. Maybe they just started, but they bought all their packaging before they came to their lawyer. And then we have to give them the bad news that, you know what, you're going to probably be sued, or here are your risks. It's always in terms of risk as lawyers, but here are your risks if you use this, and you probably don't want to move forward with it. That's an expensive and not fun rebrand.
And when you're the sort of entrepreneur that created a bunch of inventory and slapped labels on it prior to researching, prior to targeting your customers, et cetera, there's nothing more daunting than realizing you've spent all your money on inventory that is diluted in a marketplace, and you don't have the capital to rebrand in a way that's quick and effective. Like, moving forward in scalable steps is also a very important fundamental part of this, where you don't just dive in head first and throw all your money at one thing and hope that it sticks.
So to that end, I'll sort of like reiterate that you should be working. So when you come to me and we do your business formation and we talk about names and brands, and then I say, in the next few weeks, you really need to call Amanda and Javnan, her partner, and talk to them about this brand and this name. I don't mean call them in 2 years. I really do mean call them in a few weeks. So it is something that should happen early on, and only to just maybe get some initial clearance done. You may not have, thousands upon thousands of dollars to do every single angle, but get some initial clearance. But if you have made a mistake, if you're sitting in this room and you're thinking like I've been going for a couple years now and I didn't do this, don't be afraid to rebrand. Don't be afraid to pause and pump the brakes and correct the mistake, because the more you continue down that rabbit hole, the harder it's going to be to climb out of it. So don't be afraid. Don't feel like crap about yourself. Don't use it as a teachable moment, basically. Use it as a teachable moment to pause, reevaluate, and go through the steps of rebranding so that you do have a future that's not a year or two, but 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years within the industry. So another question I have for you, Amanda, is, we've already talked about when it's time to trademark, earlier rather than later, but can I even get a federal trademark if it's something to do with marijuana or pot or weed, or I've maybe disregarded our advice and still put the marijuana leaf in it? Can I even get a trademark? Is that even possible? I've heard I can't.
Well, that's an unfortunate rumor that's going around trying to undermine what I do for a living. Yes, actually, it's a big myth that companies that touch the plant can't get federal trademark protection, and you can understand why people would assume that. But there are a couple myths actually in what Kimberly just said. The first is that cannabis companies can't get trademark protection, and if you were at the 10 a.m. talk, this is going to be a little repetitive, and I apologize, but hopefully it'll just reinforce what we talked about earlier. So a lot of people think that, you know, I'm a cannabis company. When I file a trademark application, I have to disclose the goods and services, not all your goods and services, but the ones you're seeking protection for. So, well, if I file an application, you know, for Kiva, and it says I sell cannabis, you know, or infused chocolate with cannabis, they're going to refuse it, of course, because it violates the Controlled Substances Act. That's true. And so we don't seek protection in connection with cannabis or distributing cannabis or anything that violates the Controlled Substances Act. Because you actually, when you think about it, hopefully your business does a little more than just makes and sells cannabis products. You might have an online presence that's really robust. Maybe you have interactive features on your website, or you provide a lot of information about the health benefits of medical cannabis. That one can be tricky for other reasons. So let's say you provide information about agricultural practices around cannabis. Or maybe you host local community educational events for other growers or for people in the industry. You know, maybe you have a dispensary and you have a jazz night there, or a game night, or you have massage services, or something like that. All kinds of different things that you might offer that are part of your brand and a key part of your brand identity, but are not actually selling cannabis and therefore are federally lawful. So right now, the bargain that we seem to have struck with the Federal Trademark Office is we can protect those lawful parts of your brand identity, even though part of what you do is sell cannabis. So far, we apply to protect those services, and the Trademark Office will often, you know, they'll Google you. They're not dumb. They see the cannabis thing in your name. They figure it out. Okay, you're a cannabis company, and they ask, does this violate the Controlled Substances Act? This thing you're trying to protect. Now, what's important there is that their question is not, are you violating the Controlled Substances Act in any of your activities? Their question is, are the goods and services that you're seeking to protect in this application in violation of the Controlled Substances Act? And if you can say, and all of our clients can say this because we set them up, no, these do not violate the Controlled Substances Act, then you can get a registration if you can show use. So far, things are changing every day, as is the case with everything in this industry. It's important to work with a trademark attorney who knows about cannabis, because they have their finger on the pulse of things, and they really are changing rapidly. Quickly, the issue about including a marijuana leaf or the word cannabis in your mark, that's not a problem in the sense that you're going to get a refusal on that basis. The Trademark Office doesn't care about that, but it may be too common. You may get a refusal because your mark is likely to be confused with yet another marijuana whatever mark. So that's the real issue there, not that the Trademark Office is objecting to the leaf itself.
Also, along the note of having other activities besides there's weed in it. If there's weed in it is your unique selling proposition, you are SOL when everybody else who doesn't have weed in it takes over your product because theirs all of a sudden can, right? So find what your unique selling proposition is, because you've spoken with your target customers, that Kiva doesn't just sell infused chocolate. Kiva is providing relaxation and safe at-home measurable medicine, right? There's a unique selling proposition that has a little more activities that can be associated with it besides there's just weed in it. Because it limits where you can go, both in who you're reaching for your target audience, and because cannabis is a commodity, and eventually it can be like an ingredient, like salsa or tomatoes, or thinking that there's just an ingredient in things, and it's really having some other aspect of what it is that you do that is unique and targeted to your target customer that will make you differentiated between you and your competitors.
And it's because of this sort of everything, and this is connected, this is important, that you need also value that goes beyond the commodity, which is your intellectual property protection. You know, that you could sell those assets that derive from the value of your intellectual property. If you don't pick a distinctive mark, though, if you don't go through this process of correctly, you know, going from idea to execution, you won't have intellectual property that you can protect and one day leverage yourself.
And so I'll just make two quick follow-up points, and then I want to go through the exercise as well, because panels are so short, they go so fast. This was like a big goal. Yeah, so fast. But, you know, I'm dealing with the startups all the time, and people come in and say, like, well, are there already too many delivery services? Or is there room for my infused product or my topicals line? And the answer is, hell yes, there's still room. Like, there are a lot of people who are hungry for a wide variety of cannabis products. I do not think that the market is saturated. I don't think, from our perspective, again, that's something that on the professional services, ancillary side, we talk about, it's great, like, we all get along because there's enough for everybody to eat. Like, we're all eating all the time. There's so much out there. There's so much market share. But you've got to come up with something different. If your idea is, I'm going to be a delivery service and we're going to deliver your meat fast, come up with something different. I kind of liken it in a lot of ways to, the restaurant and bar industry. You're going to have to separate yourself at this point with some, I hate to use the word gimmick, but something that's different, something that sets you aside. You can be successful. And then as far as scaling the business, the intellectual property is really, I think, the most fundamental component to this that, again, people are not really seeing the whole way through. If you want to expand into another state, you are going to have intellectual property that we could potentially license out to a manufacturer in Oregon or one of the other many wonderful states that will eventually have, medical or recreational cannabis laws. If you want to be acquired by another company, that's how you do it. It's not that they're buying your delivery service or your, because your chocolate is really so great. It's because the brand that you have developed is something really special. And so that's how you're going to scale the business long term. If you miss that step, then the sky really isn't your limit, to be honest. I hate to be a dream dasher, but that's why it's so important to focus on the branding and marketing.